the foolishness of the other side, because I call it foolishness. Now they've lost so much. So much. There's almost nothing left in Ukraine. What is this?
Blessings to you, my dearest family. Welcome again to Direct TV with your brother Joshua. And my dearest family, I'm actually here again with the man of God, Reverend Dr. Chris. And the last day for the global fasting, prayer and fasting, was with the man of God, Reverend Dr. Chris, which was yesterday. And he also spent time to talk about things concerning the United States, the Ukraine war, and including the USAID that Donald Trump actually put his stop to. So first, I'd like us to listen to the man of God as he speak on the war, and I'll be right back.
You always know what to do. And I look at some of the things happening around the world today, and it's a pity that a lot of people are confused about what's right or what's wrong, and then they're making their conclusions on the basis of the mendacious media around the world. How do you listen to those guys and believe you got information? I think it was yesterday or so, and yeah, they were having a little bit of a discussion. Somebody made some contribution about the Ukraine war. And earlier on today, on LN24, had a beautiful discussion on the Ukraine war. I'm not sure whether they do the broadcast of the first program. I think they often do the close. But if you can catch what was shared earlier on today by the Chronicles of Prophecy team, Yvonne, Palm Springs, Hillary, and Michael, they explained very clearly the situation with the Russia-Ukraine war. If you really want to understand it, go listen to what they said today. Go listen to what they said today. Clear analysis, because if you don't understand the historical perspective, you'll be listening to those who were paid to lie. Or you would make decisions or make your conclusions on the basis of the deception that was created in your head while you were growing up. Because most of those in the Western world and those influenced by the Western world were taught to believe that Russia was evil. And in Christianity, it was the same thing. Christian leaders from the Western world, I mean, if you were a Christian minister, an evangelist or so, and you were from the United States or you were from Europe, you carried this mentality that Russia was basically evil because of the persecution. See, there was persecution of Christians. There are many stories coming out of there. But it's amazing that they don't talk about all the other places where there was persecution. Even today, the nations where there's a lot of persecution of Christians, and no one's talking about those ones. So mentally, the idea that Russia was essentially evil was already there. And you shouldn't use that to judge. You don't use that to judge. If you want to know truth, ask the Lord. I didn't need all the history to understand it, even though I understand history. I didn't need all of that to understand what was going on. I knew by the Spirit what was going on. And I told you then, when the war started, I told you. And even before the war, I told you about the polarization that was coming. I told you about the polarization of the nations that was coming. And then the war came, and I told you that Russia was not the aggressor. I told you who was the aggressor. I told point blank, NATO. Told you. So, if you want to understand it, go listen to what they were sharing today. And then there was also an issue about the current stand of the United States, in which Ukraine is dragged into a deal with the rare earth minerals.
There are reports that Ukraine and the U.S. have agreed on the terms to strike a critical minerals deal. The Washington Post is reporting that 3 senior Ukrainian officials say the two countries reached an agreement on a framework that would include the exploitation of rare earth minerals. It could be ratified this week, with President Volodymyr Zelensky now expected to meet face-to-face with Donald Trump at the White House on Friday.
We'll be really partnering with Ukraine in terms of rare earth. We very much need rare earth. They have great rare earth. We don't have that much of it here. We have some, but we don't have that much. We need a lot more to really propel us to the next level of, we need resources. We have to double our electric capacity. We have to do many things. We have to really triple, if you think of it, the electric capacity from what we have right now, if you can believe it. It brings us great wealth. We get back the money that we've spent, and we hope that we're going to be able to settle this up. But I'm watching soldiers being killed, Ukrainian and Russian soldiers being killed. My number one thing is to get that stopped. My number two thing is I don't want to have to pay any more money, because Biden has spent $350 billion without any chance of getting it back. Now we're going to be getting all of that money back plus a lot more. And we provided a great thing. I mean, we provided something very important. And we'll be working with Ukraine, and because we'll be taking that, we're going to be taking what we're entitled to take. President Zelensky is coming to sign the deal. And it's a great thing. It's a great deal for Ukraine, too, because they get us over there, and we're going to be working over there. We'll be on the land, and you know, in that way, there's sort of automatic security, because nobody's going to be messing around with our people when we're there.
You know, my dearest family, a lot of people actually misunderstood Donald Trump based on this deal. And, you know, so many people said so many things concerning the fact that he's trying to, you know, do much more than, you know, what Donald Trump is actually doing. So the man of God, Pastor Chris, is going to also spend time to explain why he's doing that and put a balance to what's going on. So watch this.
Rare earth minerals, thank you. The reason for that is not because the United States is trying to cheat them. Those guys are intelligent. It's a deal. If we're going to keep protecting you, we must get something for it. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's what it's about. Yes, sir. They're not trying to rip Ukraine off. No, it's a deal. Yes, sir. We must get something for protecting you. You're a sovereign country. If we're going to fight for you, what do we get? We've given you so much for nothing. But we can't keep doing it. Yes, sir. So let's discuss as sovereign nations. So we come into a pact. And with this pact, Russia will accept our negotiation, because now we have a stronger negotiating power, because we have a stake. Right now, we don't have a stake. Yes, we've given you everything, billions and billions of dollars for nothing. And then we go and negotiate with Putin in your behalf for nothing. We have nothing. Yes, So if we come into this pact, then we have a strong voice. That's what Trump is saying. And Zelensky has thought about it, and that's the reason he wants to go sign it. Because there was no better deal. That's why Trump was very sure that Zelensky will come around, because there's no better deal. He gets something for it. Ukraine gets something. We get something. No one is cheated. So you have to understand the details before you go blah, 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 blah. No, just relax. Get the information first. Get the information first. When the war started, Russia called it an operation. It was a special military operation of some kind. And truly, it was strategic. In the first 1 week, they had actually done it. And Ukraine was ready to negotiate. In the first 1 week, it was done. Zelensky bowed and said, I'm ready to negotiate. So it was a 1 week operation, it was done. But then Biden and Bojo came together and they said, no way. France, Germany, they said, no way. They convinced Zelensky. They said, no, no, no. Don't negotiate. We're going to help you. Go fight. We'll be behind you. Because they were the cause of the war in the first place.
Yes, sir.
They were the cause of the provocation
Yes, sir.
in the first place. And I told you. And I didn't need Russian support for what I do.
Yes, sir.
I preach the gospel. I didn't need Russian support to tell you the truth. I just told you as it was.
Yes.
So it's not like I needed elections, and they were going to help me get elected. I just told you the truth. So not that he miscalculated. He didn't miscalculate. It was not a miscalculation, even though on a bigger scale, he didn't expect the foolishness of the other side, because I call it foolishness. Now they've lost so much.
Yes, sir.
So much. There's almost nothing left in Ukraine. What is this? So much foolishness. But that's like the devil. He lures men into destruction. They lose so much. It destroys their lives. They lose so much. Because they don't have wisdom, the wisdom of God. There's I don't know if they have those, maybe a video clip from Sachs. Do they have it? Or Scott Ritter? Okay, this is Scott Ritter. Scott Ritter was an intelligence officer in the Marine, United States. Okay, they've changed it. Okay, this is Jeffrey Sachs. This is another person. I want to tell you about the previous one. But listen to this guy. This is a man who spoke with all sides and has been very much involved with Europe, United States, Russia, and all the players because of his peculiar role. So he can give you facts. Listen to him.
So the war started. What was Putin's intention in the war? I can tell you what his intention was. It was to force Zelensky to negotiate neutrality. And that happened within 7 days of the start of the invasion. You should understand this, not the propaganda that's written about this. Oh, that they failed and he was going to take over Ukraine. Come on, ladies and gentlemen, understand something basic. The idea was to keep NATO, and what is NATO? It's the United States, off of Russia's border. No more, no less. I should add one very important point. Why are they so interested? First, because if China or Russia decided to have a military base on the Rio Grande or in the Canadian border, not only would the United States freak out, we'd have war within about 10 minutes, but because the United States unilaterally abandoned the Anti-Ballistic Missile Treaty in 2002 and ended the nuclear arms control framework by doing so. And this is extremely important to understand. The nuclear arms control framework is based on trying to block a first strike. The ABM treaty was a critical component of that. The U.S. unilaterally walked out of the ABM treaty in 2002. It blew a Russian gasket. So everything I've been describing is in the context of the destruction of the nuclear framework as well. And starting in 2010, the U.S. put in Aegis missile systems in Poland and then in Romania. And Russia doesn't like that. And one of the issues on the table in December and January, December 2021, January 2022, was, does the United States claim the right to put missile systems in Ukraine? And Blinken told Lavrov in January 2022, the United States reserves the right to put missile systems wherever it wants. That's your putative ally. And now let's put intermediate missile systems back in Germany. The United States walked out of the INF treaty unilaterally in 2019. There is no nuclear arms framework right now. None. When Zelensky said in 7 days, let's negotiate, I know the details of this exquisitely because I've talked to all the parties in detail. Within a couple of weeks, there was a document exchanged that President Putin had approved, that Lavrov had presented, that was being managed by the Turkish mediators. I flew to Ankara to listen in detail to what the mediators were doing. Ukraine walked away unilaterally from a near agreement. Why? Because the United States told them to. Because the UK added icing to the cake by having Bojo go in early April to Ukraine and explain. And he has recently, and if your security is in the hands of Boris Johnson, God help us all. Keith Starmer turns out to be even worse. It's unimaginable, but it is true. Boris Johnson has explained, and you can look it up on the website, that what's at stake here is Western hegemony. Not Ukraine, Western hegemony. Michael and I met at the Vatican with a group in the spring of 2022 where we wrote a document explaining nothing good can come out of this war for Ukraine. Negotiate now, because anything that takes time will mean massive amounts of deaths, risk of nuclear escalation, and likely loss of the war. I wouldn't change one word from what we wrote then. Nothing was wrong in that document. And since that document, since the U.S. talked the negotiators away from the table, about 1 million Ukrainians have died or been severely wounded. and the American senators who are as nasty and cynical and corrupt as imaginable say this is wonderful expenditure of our money because no Americans are dying. It's the pure proxy war. One of our senators nearby me, Blumenthal, says this out loud. Mitt Romney says this out loud. It's best money America can spend. No Americans are dying. It's unreal. Now, just to bring us up to yesterday, this failed. This project failed. The idea of the project was that Russia would fold its hand. The idea all along was Russia can't resist, as Zbigniew Brzezinski explained in 1997. The Americans thought we have the upper hand. We're going to win because we're going to bluff them. They're not really going to fight. They're not really going to mobilize. The nuclear option of cutting them out of SWIFT, that's going to do them in. The economic sanctions, that's going to do them in. The HIMARS, that's going to do them in. The ATACMS, the F-16s. Honestly, I've listened to this for 70 years. I've listened to it as semi-understanding, I'd say, for about 56 years. They speak nonsense every day. My country, my government. This is so familiar to me. Completely familiar. I begged the Ukrainians, and I had a track record with the Ukrainians. I advised the Ukrainians. I'm not anti-Ukrainian, pro-Ukrainian completely. I said, save your lives, save your sovereignty, save your territory, be neutral. Don't listen to the Americans.
Interesting. Very interesting indeed. Okay, listen to Scott Ritter.
The war started.
No. Scott Ritter. Yeah.
So the war
is in Ukraine. Do you know what a CIA base is? It's a major center of operations. The size of the number of personnel can be assigned to each base can go from, say, 10 to over 100. In Vietnam, which was a 10-year war for us, we had 12 to 16 bases. In Ukraine, we have 20 bases. This is a major effort by the CIA. This isn't minor, this isn't peripheral. And those bases cover the entire gamut of operations from unconventional warfare, guerrilla warfare, to deep reconnaissance strikes inside Russia, to political attacks on Russia, to undermining the Russian population inside this, to create pro-Russian armies, mercenaries to invade. This is what the CIA is doing in Ukraine. This is a major effort. This isn't a joke. This isn't a gimmick. This isn't a nice to have. This is a major effort by the United States to destroy Russia. The goal and objective of this is the strategic defeat of Russia. Strategic defeat doesn't mean that Russia just gets a slap on the wrist. When you strategically defeat Russia, you collapse the Russian economy. That means Russia goes back to the 1990s. You collapse Russian society back to the 1990s. You collapse Russia politically back to the 1990s. This is literally trying to take Russia back in time. That's what the strategic defeat of Russia is. So when people say, why is Putin doing this? He's doing it to save Russia from this campaign being orchestrated by the United States to destroy Russia. This isn't a game. This isn't a gimmick. This is as real as it gets. Talk to anybody who lived in Russia in the 1990s and ask them how it was. The horror of that decade. Millions of Russians died needlessly. Democracy wasn't created. It was destroyed, not by Russia, but by the United States. There's a memorandum that just came out, published in the National Security Archives, written by a senior State Department official, I think Mr. Mary, who was the Charge d'Affaires #2 at the embassy in 1994. And he says straight up, what are we doing? We are destroying Russian democracy, not building Russian democracy. And backing Boris Yeltsin, we have destroyed the institutions of democracy we claimed we want to build. People criticize Putin and say Putin is the one who destroyed democracy, but Putin didn't inherit democracy. He inherited a CIA gimmick plan operation to use democracy to take control of the Russian government. Not real democracy, but democracy in quotation marks. People need to understand this. I'm not saying that the Russians haven't done anything wrong. I'm sure we can look at things and say they could have done that better, they could have done that better, they could have done that better. But if people don't understand that war was literally the last option, Russia did everything possible to prevent this war. Tony Blinken just gave an interview that gave it all away, where he admits, he said in September of 2021, we began secretly sending weapons to Ukraine.
Yeah.
Why? That's an important date, September 2021. In June 2021, Biden met with Putin in Geneva in their summit. And at that summit, Biden promised Putin said, if you want our troops to stop moving along the borders, then you need to stop what's going on here. Stop the Ukrainian buildup, stop the threats. And the way to do that is through full implementation of the Minsk Accords. And Biden said, yes, I will instruct Blinken to do this. That was in June. In September, Blinken secretly sending weapons to Ukraine. Why? Had no intention whatsoever of putting pressure on Germany and France to implement Minsk. In October, the Russians confronted the Germans and the French and said, you must do this. And they said no. Why? Well, we now know Angela Merkel and François Hollande have acknowledged that Minsk was always a sham, always a lie, always meant to buy time for NATO to build the Ukrainian army so they could attack and liberate the Donbass, to finish the CIA's job of eliminating the political viability of the Russian population of the Donbass. And Russia said not just no, but hell no. But did they go to war originally? No. In December 17th, Russia provides 2 draft treaties, one to NATO, one to the United States, saying we're not looking for war. We're looking for a new European security framework that brings peace and stability to the region. It was rejected by NATO and the United States. In January and February, Russia reached directly to the Ukrainians and tried to negotiate it in. And the Ukrainians mocked the Russians. And when the Russian incursion, the special military operation began, it wasn't a war of destruction or occupation. It was a campaign designed to get Ukraine to the negotiating table. And it worked. 6 days after Russia crossed the border, Ukraine initiated or participated in the first round of negotiations in Gomel, Belarus. And by the end of March, they had a completed treaty, a peace treaty. A peace treaty was signed and ready to be implemented. And the West said no.
Yeah.
The West said no. So don't blame Russia. Russia is blameless in all of this. Russia is simply defending Russia's right to survive. This isn't a war about Russia trying to destroy Ukraine. This is a war about the West trying to use Ukraine to destroy Russia.
Interesting. Now, that man was chief weapons inspector of ONSCOM. So that's the United Nations Special Commission. So these are not guys that to just talk lightly. The other man that spoke earlier was the United Nations Special Advisor. See, you've heard them for yourself.
Alright, my dearest family, there you have it with the man of God, Reverend Dr. Chris. So, Pastor Chris have been saying these things over and over again. Each time I want to bring videos like this, I kind of remember a particular video I posted. I know many of you might have watched that video because it actually went viral. So the video, Pastor Chris actually said there are a lot of people that doesn't believe in what he says. There are a lot of people that doesn't believe in the things that he shares, not because those things are not true, but because they don't like him. You see, so if you are like that, you need the word of God, and that's why you are actually watching this video. You see, because the truth is there's nobody that truly loves Jesus Christ, that loves God, that will not love Pastor Chris, because everything he does is for the Lord. Everything he portrays, his life, everything he does is for God. So there's nobody that will truly say I love God and he doesn't love him. You see. So I really believe that you learned, and you are updated on what's going on. So let me know what you learned in the comment section, or let me know what you think about today's video. Don't forget, for those of you coming new to my channel, hit the subscribe button, subscribe, like today's video, guys, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.